Caught in a love affair between two brothers, Demi is chosen for a life with deadly consequences. My name is Demetria, but my friends call me Demi. I was born in a world known as Elementium. My world is not like the human world, but one that has evolved beyond their basic understanding of the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and the ability to manipulate them at will. Humans call this magic, but we call it the foundation of our evolution and the reason for our existence. Hundreds of years ago, a small group of people started to develop the ability to manipulate these four elements. No one understood why this was happening. These people were called elementals and were forced into hiding, hunted and killed by those who feared and didn't understand them. Most took to small groups called provinces, hiding in plain sight, while others traveled deep into the wilderness, at least what was left of it. These elementals were called itinerants. The province I live in is called Providence Four. It's the second largest province of 12, with 1,256 elementals consisting of 9 families: the Hopewells, the Prentices, the Seavies, the Drexels, the Crittendens, the Mallinsons, the Turlingtons, the Caddells, and the Dlaminis. We made our home on a large island hidden in plain sight of the non-elementals, created about 800 years ago, making it one of the original provinces. Our island was well hidden behind a veil, making us invisible to the humans who lived on the mainland, 500 yards offshore. The only way on or off the island was by boat or helicopter. Over time, a few among our people truly developed their special gifts, gaining the ability beyond the control of a single element, mastering 2 and, in rare cases, mastering 3. It was unheard of for someone to truly master all 4. The magic we possessed wasn't like your garden variety parlor tricks, making rabbits appear out of hats or making people vanish into thin air. Although some had the ability to hide things, while others had the ability to make you see things that were not actually there. This came in particularly handy when trying to hide a large group of people in plain sight. However, most were only able to do the basics: control the elements, create fireballs, float objects with the wind, and move water and earth. We were taught all through school how to use these gifts and manipulate the elements. Normally, one would be more dominant than the others. When we graduate high school in 3 weeks, we will be taken to the forum to perform the judgment ceremony, where it is revealed to everyone, including ourselves, what our dominant element is, if we haven't already figured it out by then. Then, we will be placed in a role within our element in a province of our choosing. The forum is a sacred place where all of our ceremonies are held. The entire province gathers to watch and welcome the new elementals. Each graduate is called upon individually to select a golden egg from the judgment well. This well is solid gold, adorned with 5 large gems, one red representing fire, yellow representing wind, green representing earth, blue representing water, and finally violet, which represents royal. You see, our royal families were not appointed by birth but chosen by the elements. At the judgment ceremony, the graduate dons their black robes and are blessed by the earth, air, fire and water, and then selects a golden egg from the well and smashes it onto the ground, breaking it open and releasing the chosen element. For a very select few, the sphere reveals a purple puff of smoke, choosing them to be the royal element and next in succession for the throne. Our hierarchy was divided into 2 divisions. We had a king and queen who ruled all 12 of the provinces. Then we also had our royal elements, always the chosen 4, an earth, an air, a fire, and a water. These royal 4 counseled alongside the king and queen, implementing our laws and enforcing our rules, and each province has its own royal 4. Those with earth-dominant powers were sent to the farms, where they would cultivate our food. Air elementals were usually musicians or architects with strong creative mindsets. Then there was fire. People who possessed this element were our protectors, decision-makers, and critical thinkers, chosen to police and protect our kind. We called them watchers. Finally, there was water. Those dominant in water were regarded as gods and sometimes feared, as this was an extremely dangerous element to possess. This element was the hardest to manipulate. There is water in everything: the earth, the air, people, and animals. Water is in every living being on the planet, meaning water elementals could manipulate everything. Those select few who truly mastered water were sent to learn medicine or science. It was very rare to see a true water elemental. I can only think of a few in our history who were pure. Cordelia Mason was the very first pure water hundreds of years ago. She went mad and was hung after she tortured and killed her royal family. Marina Van killed herself after she accidentally drowned her entire family. Lyle Tallulah, the first male warder, ruled a province as king but did not take a wife for fear of what could happen if he lost control of his element. He eventually locked himself away and slowly starved himself to death. Douglas Laguna was the first successful warder to control not only his element, but Earth as well, becoming a doctor of elemental magic. His techniques became the foundation for our studies. Since Douglas, there have been more successful pure waters, but I only know of 4 personally: Dr. Mira Alda, Cora Samudra, Dr. Ferguson Dlamini, and Kai Dlamini. Elementium is ruled by the royal family, 3 brothers and soon-to-be their sister. The youngest of the 4 was Ayala Dlamini, the sister and my best friend. She is my age, 18, and will be graduating with me this year. She already knew her dominant element, air, but she would have to wait until the forum to crack her egg and truly know. She was a tall girl, almost 6 feet, with a thin frame, medium olive complexion, and long dark curly hair that hung to her waist. She had golden almond-shaped eyes, the same as their mother. She had a round face with dimples, high cheekbones, thin lips, and a small narrow nose, exceptionally beautiful. She is very bubbly and outgoing and socializes with everyone. It came to her quite naturally. Everyone knew her name, obviously. What was remarkable about Ayala was she had this uncanny ability to know everyone's name in return. What I loved most about Ayala was that she was spontaneous, personable, loved, and admired by everyone. She could be a little extravagant and lacked impulse control sometimes, but that made her adventurous, curious, and flirtatious. Everyone was her friend. However, I was her best friend. We were opposites. She brought me out of my comfort zone, and I kept her grounded. I think that's why we got along so well. The third and youngest of her 3 brothers, Eden Dlamini, mastered Earth, and at the age of 22, he has managed to become the youngest top producer of agricultural goods in our province. At 6 foot 4 inches tall, Eden wasn't even the tallest of the Dlamini siblings. With his strong muscular frame, thick tousled brown hair, and green almond-shaped eyes, similar to his father's, he was easy on the eyes. His complexion was a little darker than the rest of his family since he spent most of his time outside. Eden was a true entrepreneur and smart businessman. He's hardworking and passionate about his business. It took a lot of self-discipline to be such a success at his young age. You could always find Eden at the market in the morning with his gorgeous wife, Gayleen. Just like his sister, Eden has a gravitational pull that draws people in. He too knew everyone, and of course everyone knew him. His laugh was contagious and made you feel comfortable around him. He and his wife had plans to build another farm on the far side of the island and raise goats. It seemed like a simple life, in contrast to the grandeur in which the royals lived now, constantly displaying perfection. Gayleen was not born to elemental parents. She grew up on the island of Hawaii and was brought to Providence Four when she was very young, never really getting to know her biological parents. Remarkably, Gayleen grew into her magic later in her childhood, but is now one of the most powerful earth manipulators our province has. She is a shy, quiet woman who puts family above everything else. Her darker tan complexion, made even darker by spending most of her time outdoors, complements her silky black hair that hangs long and straight down her back, accentuating her high cheekbones, full lips, and beautiful thin dark brown eyes. The second brother, Reese Dlamini, who I always found to be the most arrogant and overconfident of the brothers, mastered fire. His reputation as the royal playboy was not grossly exaggerated. At the age of 24, he had slept with most of the province's eligible bachelorettes, refusing to take a wife or even a single partner against his parents' wishes. You could say he was the rebellious one. At every royal event, he was often seen with a pair of different young women, one on each arm. His parents looked on with utter disappointment. Admittedly, he is a very attractive man with his well-groomed facial hair, high cheekbones, warm dark olive flawless skin, and strong jawline. I could see why all the women wanted to be with him. He was the shortest of the 3 brothers, not quite 6 feet tall, with a broad chest, thick arms, and long dark hair tied back at the nape of his neck. A few wispy pieces fell into his eyes, which he brushed away with a cool, sensual casualness. He was sophisticated and charming, and had a way of flashing his brilliant golden eyes that made your insides all warm and tingly. However, his little tricks never really worked on me. I think I was one of the only women he hadn't slept with, and it wasn't for a lack of trying on his part. I really had no interest in him that way. Then there was the eldest, Demi, who was 25 years old, one of the very rare pure water manipulators, and one of the most revered of the Royal Four. He was also the most intimidating. He was 6 foot 6 inches tall, with blue almond-shaped eyes, an olive complexion, dark chocolate brown hair cut short, and well-groomed facial hair. He was extremely fit and always well-dressed. His clothes were always tailored to fit his exquisite frame. He was the definition of what a royal should look like. However, I always found him to be standoffish and distant. He never seemed to have time for anyone and kept mostly to himself. He was a bit of a mystery to me. I never saw him with a woman and often wondered if he was gay. Each sibling specialized in one of the 4 elements. You could say we were living in a remarkable time in our history, or at least that's what my history teacher said as he rambled on while I mindlessly doodled on my notepad. We only have 3 weeks left of school. Then I will finally discover my dominant element and leave this boring, mundane high school experience behind me. I have never really been particularly good at one element or another. They all seemed to come naturally. I didn't really have to try or focus too hard. I secretly hoped I mastered water so I could major in elemental regeneration and restorative medicine and move far away from the politics and pettiness of the mainstream socialites. Ayala hopes I master air like her so we can go to teaching college together, land jobs at the academy in Providence 9, and influence change within the provinces. She has an in since her father, King Ransom, holds a seat on the board. I'm just not sure that's what I want for myself. That just means more parties, more politics, and more campaigning for change. Although Reese might be the rebellious heartbreaker of the family, Ayala certainly had her own radical views on change within the provinces that didn't necessarily coincide with her parents' traditional views. Ayala believes that your ability to manipulate a single element shouldn't dictate your career path. One should be able to decide on a career based on inspiration, drive, and goals. I agree with her to the extent that even if I master air, my true desire is to live off the grid, away from the hustle of the political scene. The only real way we are going to ever make change is if we force a change, and it has to start at the top, Ayala would always tell me. She might be an air, but she truly thought like a fire. I think that is what drives her desire for change. It was too bad that no one ever took her seriously. Well, not yet anyway. She will make a great royal, but since our royal titles are never passed down from one generation to the next, Ayala would have to wait like the rest of us until the forum to find out if she would be a royal. However, there was very little doubt that she wouldn't choose Royal Wind. All 3 of her older brothers received purple smoke, so there was little doubt that she wouldn't become the final member of the Royal Four. Then, finally, our province would have a true Royal Four. Their mother, Queen Orla, is an heir and has been doing double duty as both Queen and Royal Elemental until her daughter was old enough to take part in the forum. Our previous royal heir, Laura Lee, died during childbirth last year. She was never married, and no one really knew who the father was. It was all a big scandal. Normally, when a royal dies, a new one is chosen at the next forum. Ayala has been just biding her time for the last year. I heard the class bell ring. Time had flown by so quickly today, it usually seemed to stand still on Fridays. Today was an exception. I reached for my backpack at my feet as everyone hustled to make a quick exit. There were loud cheers and whistles, but I paid no attention to all the excitement around me. I still had one more class to get through before the day ended. Demetria. I heard a familiar voice call my name. Ayala had made her way from the fundamental magic classroom across campus to find me. She usually attracted a lot of attention everywhere she went. Today was no exception. She wore a short leather miniskirt, thigh-high brown leather boots, and a tight deep V-neck long-sleeve white shirt. Her long dark hair was tied up in pigtails that bounced and swayed as she walked. Miss Demi, to what do we owe the pleasure? I heard Mr. Mallinson, our history teacher, address her. Mr. Mallinson was a tall, thin man who dressed more like a science teacher than a history teacher, with his brown tweed jacket and red bow tie. He looked like he was in his 60s with his grey hair, cleanly shaven face and deep-set wrinkles. He wore thick, dark-framed glasses that sat on the very end of his nose. He always looked like he was pondering the meaning of life. Good afternoon, Mr. Mallinson. I am here to escort Demetria to elemental study, she said in a sickly sweet voice. This wasn't how she normally sounded, so I knew she was up to something. However, Mr. Mallinson didn't seem to pick up on her deception. I was unaware that Miss Cadell was in need of an escort. Those who remained in class erupted into hysterical laughter at Mr. Mallinson's choice of the word escort. How very juvenile. I just rolled my eyes and headed for the door. Ayala just shrugged her shoulders as she followed me through the doorway and into the hall, leaving Mr. Mallinson perplexed at the sudden outburst of laughter from the male population of his class. What are you up to, Ayala? I scrutinized. She was up to something, I could sense it. Why do you always think I have some sort of hidden agenda? She laughed. Her innocent routine wasn't fooling me. Because I know you, I said bluntly. So spill it. She laughed. Okay, fine. My parents and brothers are heading to Providence 9 this weekend, and I want to throw a party while they're gone. She was starting to get excited, and when she got excited, her ideas tended to get out of control. They will be leaving at around 3 this afternoon, so I figured we could skip the last period and head to the mainland to get some supplies. She lit up like a child on Christmas morning. Her eyes sparkled with the excitement of her newly formed plan. And how do you expect to get to the mainland? I was only mildly entertaining her ideas as we walked together down the crowded hallways to our lockers. However, skipping the last period on a Friday did sound like a great idea. We only had 3 weeks, and what more could I possibly learn? Finals were starting in a week. I could take the time to study. Jesse is going to take us in his dad's boat. She started to explain before I cut her off. Us? What do you mean, us? I was really getting the sense now that there was way more than she was letting on. I could tell she was struggling to find the appropriate response. She was chewing on her bottom lip and looking at her feet. Since when was Ayala Dlamini at a loss for words? Most of the time, she would just babble for the sake of filling silence. Okay, fine. Jesse, Katya, Mateo, and... She paused and took a deep breath, letting the name fall out of her mouth in one heavy sigh. Tate. That's a hard pass, I said flatly, before slamming my locker door shut so loudly a few heads turned in my direction. I swung my backpack over my shoulder and headed for the main exit of the school. Tate was my boyfriend for all of junior year. He's 6'2" tall with blonde hair, seductive blue eyes, a perfect smile, and a charming laugh. He was always so sweet, surprising me with flowers during school and impromptu date nights. We would sneak out at night just to walk the shorelines of the island and look at the stars. We would talk about what we wanted for our future, and I thought we wanted the same things. That was until Gianna Hopewell was